Prayers of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says, to those whose work is to govern or to lead, when I say that the wise should govern the world, I am not taking a political point of view, but a spiritual one. The various forms of government can stay as they are. That is only of secondary importance. But whatever the social status of the men in power, they should receive their inspiration from those who have realized the truth and have no other will than that of the Supreme. With love and blessings, says our Divine Mother. Words of our Divine Mother from the Collective Works of our Divine Mother, Volume 9, page 413, topic, How to Live the Spiritual Life. Our Divine Mother says, to live the spiritual life is to open to another world within oneself. It is to reverse one's consciousness, as it were. The ordinary human consciousness, even in the most developed, even in men of great talent and great realization, is a moment turned outwards. All the energies are directed outwards. The whole consciousness is spread outwards. And if anything is turned inwards, it is very little, very rare, very fragmentary. It happens only under the pressure of very special circumstances, violent shocks. The shocks life gives precisely with the intention of slightly reversing this moment of exteriorization of the consciousness. Our Divine Mother says, all who have lived a spiritual life have had the same experience. All of a sudden, something in their being has been reversed. So to speak, has been turned suddenly and sometimes completely inwards, and also at the same time upwards, from within upwards. But it is not an external above, it is within, deep, something other than the heights. Something other than the heights as they are physically conceived. Something has literally been turned over. Our Divine Mother says, when the reversal of the being has taken place, all that is finished. One no longer seeks, one sees. One no longer deduces, one knows. One no longer grabs, one walks straight to the goal. And when one has gone further, only a little further, one knows, feels, lives the supreme truth that the supreme truth alone acts, the supreme Lord alone wills, knows and does through human beings. How could there be any possibility of error there? What he does because he wills to do it. For our mistaken vision, these are perhaps incomprehensible actions, but they have a meaning and an aim and lead where they ought to lead, says our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother continues to say, you can create your atmosphere by controlling your thoughts, turning them exclusively towards the sadhana, controlling your actions, turning them exclusively towards the sadhana, abolishing all desires and all useless external ordinary activities, living a more intense inner life, and separating yourself from ordinary things, ordinary thoughts, ordinary reactions, ordinary actions, then you create a kind of atmosphere around you. Our Divine Mother says, for example, instead of reading any odd thing and chanting and doing anything, whatever, if you read only what helps you to follow the path, if you act only in conformity with what can lead you to the divine realization, if you abolish in yourself all desires and impulses turned towards external things, if you calm your mental being, appease your vital being, if you shut yourself against suggestions coming from outside and become immune to the actions of to the action of people surrounding you, you create such a spiritual atmosphere that nothing can touch you, and it no longer depends at all on circumstances or on whom you live with or on the conditions you live in, because you are endorsed in your own spiritual atmosphere. And that is how one obtains it, by turning one's attention solely to the spiritual life, by reading only what can help in the spiritual life, by doing only what leads you to the spiritual life, and so on. Our Divine Mother says, then you create your own atmosphere. Then you create your own atmosphere, but naturally, if you open all the doors and listen to what people tell you, follow the advice of this one and the inspirations of that one, and are full of desires for outside things, you cannot create a spiritual atmosphere for yourself. Our Divine Mother says you will have an ordinary atmosphere like everybody else. The only true attitude for a yogi is to be plastic and ready to obey the divine command, whatever it may be. Nothing must be indispensable to him, nothing a burden. Our Divine Mother says, often the first impulse of those who want to live the spiritual life is to throw away all they have, but they do it because they want to be rid of a burden, not because they want to surrender to the divine. Men who possess wealth and are surrounded by the things that give them luxury and enjoyment turn to the divine, and immediately their movement is to run away from these things, or they say to escape from their bondage. But it is a wrong movement. You must not think that the things you have belong to you. You must not think that the things you have belong to you. They belong to the divine. Let me repeat, it is a wrong moment. You must not think that the things you have belong to you. They belong to the divine. If the divine wants you to enjoy anything, enjoy it. But be ready to give it up the very next moment with a smile, says our Divine Mother. Question, sweet Mother, where does our true spiritual life begin? For this, our Divine Mother smiles and says, the true spiritual life begins when one is in communion with the divine in the psychic. Let me repeat, the true spiritual life begins when one is in communion with the divine in the psychic, when one is conscious of the divine presence in the psychic and in constant communion with the psychic. Then the spiritual life begins, not before. The true spiritual life. When one is united with one's psychic being and conscious of the divine presence and receives the impulses for one's actions from this divine presence, and when the will has become a conscious collaborator with the divine will, that is the starting point. Before that, one may be an aspirant to the spiritual life, but one does not have a spiritual life, says our Divine Mother. Question, sweet Mother, what is it that helped me always remember that I am living a spiritual life? For this, our Divine Mother says, the awareness of the divine presence in all things and always. A prayer given by our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says, Supreme Lord, grant that I may become conscious of your presence. Next topic, spiritual rebirth, taken from the collective works of our Divine Mother, Volume 7, page 176. Our Divine Mother says spiritual rebirth, an utter casting away of all ordinary past. For spiritual rebirth means the constant throwing away of our previous associations and circumstances and proceedings to live as if at each virgin moment we were starting life anew. It is to be free of what is called karma, the stream of our past actions. In other words, a liberation from the bondage of nature's common activity of cause and effect. When this cutting away of the past is triumphantly accomplished, in the consciousness, all those mistakes, blunders, errors, and follies, which still vivid in your recollection, cling to us like leeches sucking our life blood, drop away, leaving us most joyfully free. This freedom is not a mere matter of thought. It is the most solid, practical, material fact. We really are free. Nothing binding us, nothing affects us. There is no obsession of responsibility. If we want to counteract, annul, or outgrow our past, we cannot do it by mere repentance or similar things. We must forget that the untransformed past has ever been and enter into an enlightened state of consciousness which breaks loose from all moorings. To be reborn means to enter, first of all, into our psychic consciousness where we are one with the divine and eternally free from the reactions of karma. Without becoming aware of the psychic, it is not possible to do so. But once we are securely conscious of the true soul in us, which is always surrendered to the divine, all bondage ceases. Then, incessantly, life begins afresh. Then the past no longer cleaves to us. To give you an idea of the final height of spiritual rebirth, says our Divine Mother, I must say that there can be a constant experience of the whole universe actually disappearing at every instant and being at every instant newly created, says our Divine Mother.